This live. The Idaho House has passed a $643 million budget for Idaho's public universities. Opponents saying that's way too much money for schools that spend a lot of money on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, we have the clips of debate on the House floor today. It's on the way on Steph Lucas Live. So, House had a lot of debate today on the budget for Idaho's public universities. In JFAC committee a couple of weeks ago, there were three different budgets proposed. One of those from Representative Ron Nate proposed $635 million go to Idaho's public universities, University of Idaho, Boise State University, Idaho State University. And last year, Representative Ron Nate was one of the very vocal legislators that wanted to take away some money from the universities because it was being proven that the universities were using social justice curriculum, diversity, equity, inclusion, that sort of thing. So Representative Ron Nate brought that up again in JFAC a couple of weeks ago, and he wanted the $635 million. Well, the legislators went with the $643 million. That came out of committee, and there was the vote today. Of course, my cat, ignore that. And we're going to move on to Representative Ron Nate. And in these clips, there's legislators discussing why they're opposed to this. And that's on the way. Let's play. I believe this is
For 2 years now, the legislature has tried to communicate as best it can through budgeting about potential problems it sees at the universities. By and large, universities do a great job. They're staffed with great professors and administration, but they have been taking their eye off the ball. Higher education should be our goal. Excellence in higher education should be achievable. But what we're getting is a creep towards higher indoctrination. Last year, we cut the increase in college budgets by $2.5 million. And I stress that, we cut the increase by $2.5 million to hopefully get the universities to use that motivation for finding out what's going wrong on campuses, how they're deviating from the principles of higher education. Instead, what we found out is the universities did just the opposite, almost thumbing their nose at the legislature by starting a new anti-racism center at Boise State.
And that is Representative Ron Nate today talking about why he was in opposition to the $643 million budget for Idaho's public universities. And he mentioned last year, $2 million, a whole $2 million, was cut from the university's budget. And there's actually a different type of thought with that. That money wasn't even really taken away from the university budgets. It was just reappropriated to something else. So getting you to this year, of course, we had Marlene Trump from Boise State University, and then Scott Green from University of Idaho, presidents there, testifying in front of JFAC. Practically could hear violins in the background about how they needed the money. And Marlene Trump never said she wasn't teaching social justice. She said a lot of things like, she just said a lot of things. I think word salad is what a lot of people have said that was. We're just not quite sure what was going on. But the point is she hasn't stopped teaching it, right? And University of Idaho, Scott Green said that his university conducted a study. They hired the same law firm, by the way, that Boise State University hired the year before to prove that white people weren't made to feel threatened or pointed out in classes. So ironic, the same law firm working for University of Idaho that works for Boise State University. Anyway, and they both said It's not happening here. University of Idaho said, we even had a study done. We hired a company. No social justice going on here. No critical race theory going on over here. Well, that's really trustworthy when you hire the company that does it. And like your university conducted an internal investigation. Look, guys, I don't even need to draw you to a conclusion here. You get what's happening, right? So we have this from Representative Ron Nape. And now we have, I believe it's Representative Barbieri. I hope I get that correct. And here's a clip of his bringing up that these programs are happening. There's plenty of evidence, despite what Scott Green and Marlene Trump will tell you. So let's bring up that clip.
The diversity statements required with respect to just employment of various positions speak for themselves. Whether or not the institutions have produced reports saying that there's no CRT, no diversity influenced teaching, just look at the job postings requirements. Boise State, a clinical assistant professor of civil engineering must have one-page statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Assistant professor of cell, molecular, and development biology has to have evidence of a commitment to create a diverse and inclusive work environment. A description of how the candidate research programs and teaching philosophy would address BSU's diversity and inclusion goals. The assistant professor of the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, a description of how the candidate's research program and teaching philosophy would address Boise State University's diversity and inclusion programs, goals. Assistant professor of avian biology, evidence of the commitment to create a diverse and inclusive working environment. Description of how the candidate's research programs and teaching philosophy would address Boise State University's diversity and inclusion goals. Can you see how this might exclude a large number of instructors that may not have that same ideology?
So there you have Representative Vito Barbieri, and he is giving some examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion being taught in Idaho's public universities, as well as it being required internally, right? He's talking about the Department of Aviary Science there, I believe. Kind of reminds me of some information I heard about today. It's just going on nationally. Of course, it's not just here in Idaho. What I think representatives of universities would have you believe is that it's happening everywhere else but Idaho, right? Let's talk about the Association of American Medical Colleges. Recently, they had a report called the 54 pages, Advancing Health Equity, a guide to language, narratives, and concepts. So that's a big red flag right there, right? And it's not just enough to be a good doctor anymore, okay? You have to, well, what would they like for you to do? They would like for their medical students to demonstrate a knowledge of the intersectionality of a patient's multiple identities and how each identity may present varied and multiple forms of oppression or privilege related to clinical decisions and practice. Right? Your patient's multiple identities. Now, that's from the American Medical Colleges Association, and they've proposed the DEI and curriculum standards. So that's just another example of this happening in universities all across the country. Clearly, Idaho University is no exception. Representative Vito Barbieri there debating today. So I have another clip here, and I believe is that Megan Blanksma? Let's bring this one up, see what this one's about.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to direct everybody to their desk. There's a letter from the 4 major universities. If you'll please take a look at it. I don't want to break my rule and read on the floor, so I would ask you to do your own reading. I don't want to be a hypocrite here. I want you to see that the university presidents have all reaffirmed their commitment to follow the policies, rules, and guidelines set forth by the Idaho legislature. I also want you to see that they've directed your eyes right toward Title 33-138, which is, you will not be surprised, House Bill 377. So this is a recommitment by the universities to follow the policies set by this legislature. We can say a lot of things. I think the best way that we understand what's going on at the universities is to visit the universities. And you'll notice in this letter, they give you that opportunity. If you really want to see whether critical race theory or whatever issue is being taught at your universities, they've given you an invitation to walk in the door. They've given you an opportunity to go take a look for yourself, and I would say that's the best thing you can do. Now, I can guarantee there's not a person in this room that thinks that I will in any way defend anything Boise State, ever. But I will tell you that this is a good budget and we need to fund our universities. They have made a commitment to following the guidelines, policies, and rules that the state has set forward. These are guidelines and policies that you yourselves have voted on. This is House Bill 377. They've made a commitment in writing to you that they're going to follow the policies the legislature has set forth for them, that they're going to provide a good quality education for our kids, and they're going to listen to those students and parents that had concerns. And those concerns were then voiced in 377 and are now in Idaho Code on 33138. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would really encourage your green light for this budget.
So that's Megan Blanksma. She's saying that the budget should be passed because essentially universities are being transparent, I think what she's saying, and that people and parents have just been invited to just walk in the door and see if critical race theory and social justice are being taught. I think, Megan, that this is the point, that parents have already walked in the door a year ago. That's why we passed House Bill 377, and now we're asking that their budgets be reduced. We already walked in the door, okay? We already figured that out. That's the point. And if you listen to what Marlene Tromp said a few weeks ago, and if you listen to what University of Idaho Scott Green said, and just how hurt he was, right? I think you're going to know that they haven't stopped teaching that. And Representative Vito Barbieri had examples right there, okay? We've already walked in the door. We've already seen, and we already don't want our tax dollars paying for this. That's what constituents are asking. That's how that works. But if you would like the argument of a representative that voted in favor of this, there is one, Megan Blanksma. So that is what happened as far as the budget, $643 million, as a matter of fact, for Idaho's universities. Do I have my handy dandy slide here? Yep, there we go. So too much money spent on social justice programs, and that is what is happening as far as that budget today. But let's move on to some other items we have here that I want to go over with you. And of course, I have my handy dandy slideshow. Hopefully I didn't misspell everything here. Let's bring this up. The talking points. Do we have this? Yes. Yes. Sorry, guys. All right. Random crazy headlines. We'll go over that one in a minute. I know. It sounds fun. Okay. Here's one I just wanted to bring up with you today. And it's not so much that I'm going to explain ESG to you, because I'm pretty sure that as informed voters, you know what this is. If you listen to Glenn Beck at all, you know what the ESG is. That's a little bit about basically your social credit score. Like, how many resources of the environment are you using? Do you drive an electric car? Your credit scores are going to be based on this in the future, okay? It's real. It's happening. But as per usual, the usual suspects in the Idaho media would like you to think that it's not happening and just kind of make this confused, well, I don't know what they really mean, and try to change the headlines around. So here's a headline from the Associated Press today. Idaho lawmakers look to prohibit ESG in state investments. Here's the first line from the AP article. I love it so much. And if you can't, I'm sure you can tell the bias here, but let's just talk about it anyway. Several pieces of legislation aimed at preventing Idaho government entities from investing in companies that choose environmentally friendly paths or follow particular social policies are moving through the legislature. So they don't come out and say, hey, your credit score, if you can get a loan, it's going to be based on a social credit score. They don't say that. It's this setup of this very confusing, well, why would legislators not want you to protect the environment? You see how they put that from investing in companies that choose environmentally friendly paths. I mean, wow, citation needed, AP. I could just stick a green leaf on anything these days and call it environmentally friendly, and probably the government would go for it, but that's neither here nor there. The point is just not so subtle bias in this very first sentence of this article out of the AP. But I have spoken to some legislators about this, and yes, they are interested in refraining from having ESG be practiced in Idaho. The AP, of course, seems like they're all for ESG, environmentally friendly paths. I love how they make it sound so very harmless, or follow particular social policies. Anyway, there's your not so subtle bias of the day from the AP. You can find it more than once. Oh, we're going to save the best for last with that talking point slideshow. Let's get to random crazy headlines. I still want to bring this up. It's about Idaho Senate Pro Tem. These are all just, and the reason the fonts are different is because it's random crazy headlines. So last week, Chuck Winder, Senate Pro Tem, basically called the House crazy people because along party lines, which really doesn't happen a lot in the Idaho House passed Bill 675 that would prevent children under the age of 18 from getting transgender confirmation surgeries, puberty blockers, hormones, etc., etc. So, passed remarkably well along party lines. I believe every Republican there voted for it except for Fred Wood from over by Twin Falls. However, Idaho Senate Pro Tem. Craziness from the House won't get far in the Senate. This is what Chuck Winder said at lunch last week with reporters alongside Democrat House and Senate leadership. Another random crazy headline. I don't think you'll see some of the craziness that the House seems to like to do get very far in the Senate. And then leaders decry craziness in Idaho House, say Senate will halt it. So, way to grab some headlines, Chuck Winder. Now, he's making reference to House Bill 675. He was also making reference to House Bill 666. That's not like it sounds. Just, I'm sure every legislative session at some point, you're going to have a House Bill 666, and everyone has a good chuckle, except for Chuck. He said in the Idaho Press, I believe, that he said that bill was evil and 666 was fitting, but the House is the one full of crazy people. Okay. Weird flex, Chuck, but okay. Moving on. What happened today is the Idaho Senate released a press release saying that they do not approve of gender confirmation surgeries, puberty blockers, that sort of thing. That sort of stuff is like the puberty blockers, transgender reassignment surgeries, the AP and Capital Press, the usual suspects, they refer to it now as gender care. So they've given a nice term to this when House Bill 675 just flat out called it genital mutilation. Said it fell under that policy, actually. But let's move on to what the Senate did today. They released a statement saying that no, they don't approve of gender reassignment surgeries, puberty blockers, hormone therapy, but it's still dead in the Senate. So that's how that went. Random craziness that Chuck Winder said he would put a stop to, also said he condemns it, but he's not going to do anything about the bill. So there's your update on House Bill 675. What else do we want to talk about? I have all of my notes here. Let's see where we're at with time. Okay, we're good. We have a few minutes. Let's talk about... we covered 675, right? Okay, so what else do we have going on? Okay, a couple of just brief stories here. The House voted 45-22 to kill the resolution that opponents decried as recognition of federal land management in Idaho. Now, you just saw Republican Representative Megan Blanksma, who was all in favor of the bill, the budget for Idaho's universities, saying that the resolution was a celebration of the federal government's management of what she says should be state land. So that's actually one of those headlines that can be kind of misleading. Say, well, why wouldn't they want to celebrate federal land? the national parks were America's best idea. It's completely different. Okay, what they're putting there. So a lot, and that's a whole nother discussion to have about federal lands. And a lot of Republicans and conservatives saying those should be under state control. But I'm just letting you know. That's another update. Let's talk about federal money here. Senate Bill 1404 had its first reading on the 14th of March, and now it has been reported, printed, referred to finance, reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. What's Senate Bill 1404? It's more federal money. It appropriates money from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, federal money, right? And it gives a $1,000 bonus to each full-time equivalent administrator, teacher, pupil service staff classified position, right? And they're saying it's a teacher bonus. Well, in whole, this bill will cost more than $36.7 million in borrowed federal funds, right? You know, the ARPA money, look, guys, when they passed this last year in 2021 and accept the money, they said, we have to be careful with this. We're borrowing it from our grandchildren. And in my case, I'm saying we're borrowing it from our great-great-grandchildren. And what's happening is actually Senate Bill 1404. It's on its way with a due pass recommendation, but it would be another $36.7 million in federal funding from ARPA funds. Okay? I just want to update you on that. Those are some of the bills that are happening in the Idaho House. But again, the big one today, we're talking about $643 million for Idaho's public universities. And lots of people, well, myself included, pretty much know they haven't stopped teaching social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion. Save the best for last. Wanted to give you guys a funny headline here. As wild as this legislative session has been, I always like to update people on our neighboring state of Wyoming, and I'm here in East Idaho, and so Wyoming's our neighbor. So any of the doings in Wyoming, I'm just going, wow, they think Idaho's the wild, wild west. Not by a long shot. By the way, and this isn't the headline, but this is a different headline. Wyoming now has an app where you can claim roadkill, so you can go and get it and eat it. Right? It was in a Not the Onion story today. It's true. So they have an app now. Probably a good idea. At least they're not wasting roadkill. But it's just not a headline you see every day when you live in New Jersey. I suppose that seems weird to people there. But let's move on to our fun headline. As wild as things have been in the Idaho legislature this session, and last, there haven't been any murder threats. So over in Wyoming, and I hope I'm pronouncing this town right. I've never heard of this, but Ethete, Wyoming, legislator claims a fellow lawmaker made a death threat against her. Now, big headline, Cowboy State Daily reporting on this. Big ups to them on it. But this is Representative Andy LeBeau on the left here, says she was told that Republican John Romero Martinez from Cheyenne, she was told this. She didn't actually hear it, but she was told he made a threat against her during a phone call with a lobbyist in the closing days of the legislature's budget session. And of course, I don't have all the details here from the article, but I read it already. And so what happens is in our neighboring state of Wyoming is this legislator supposedly offhandedly said to a lobbyist, man, if she passes that, I'm going to kill her. So if you were in Idaho, if you were a legislator and somebody threatened to kill you, what would you do? I'd just show up the next day like, whatever, that's my life, right? I'm a talk show host. I get death threats all the time. But she was so upset. She took the last day of the session off, and she told everyone on Twitter Sunday nights or Facebook posts, what have you. Same thing now. They're all Twitter, Facebook, they're all social media, whatever. She makes social media posts, and she's saying that she's taking time off because she's recovering from a death. She's healing. She's healing from a death threat. And I just thought, man, what? I mean, if it were me, I'd just show up the next day like, well, take your best shot, buddy. So at least as crazy as things are, as argumentative as it gets, haven't had any death threats yet or anything as wild as this. So I just thought I would update you guys on the doings of our neighboring state of Wyoming. And that's what we do here sometimes, is we talk about what's happening in other states. And I like to let you know when similar legislation is passing in other states as well as Idaho because, again, Idaho's not the crazy island of misfit toys. There's plenty of liberty-loving people all over this great country. And I don't know how to coincide that with death threats in Wyoming. I would just like to say in these pictures, these two just look like they're a ton of fun at parties. All right, that should be it for Steph Lucas Live. I'm promoting Marxist Madness as well. I believe there's still time. Get those brackets filled out. Gonna have some winners coming up here. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for listening for a few minutes, getting some of the bills and budgets going through the Idaho legislature. And let's turn that off because I don't want to leave you with those two and their death threat is my parting shot here. So have a great night. Thanks for joining on Steph Lucas Live. I will see you back here on Friday after you've had an absolutely fabulous St. Patrick's Day, I'm sure. I will be back here